You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm Dustin, Tony is with me, and we are here to talk about all the news related to streaming services and the content on those services from March 6th through the 12th. We have a number of different things to cover. There's not a whole lot to talk about when we go through the rundown. We do have a couple of things, but we do have some smaller discussion points that we didn't get to on the last episode that we will in fact get to this episode. So let's start off with the news rundown. Starting with Netflix, there's an action heist film called Kingdom Come. John Boyega has teamed with Netflix to develop a slate of African films. Netflix has ordered a magic travelogue with Jay Chow, and Netflix has also acquired the rights to the novel Call Your Daughter Home. There's an animated comedy series called Mulligan that has gotten a series order. That's coming from Tina Fey, Robert Carlock. And then Lost in Space has been renewed for a third and final season. It's not necessarily getting canceled according to the creators. They always had 3 seasons planned as a trilogy of sorts, so not that we're going to be, any fans of Lost in Space are not going to be missing out on anything. Jumping over to Prime Video, ex-Formula One champion Fernando Alonso is the focus of a new docuseries coming to the service in the future. There's no news for Hulu. CBS All Access has announced that they have inked a streaming deal with the National Women's Soccer League, as well as Twitch. Twitch is also involved in that deal, where certain games will be available for free on Twitch, and then other games will be available exclusively on CBS All Access as far as streaming goes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised about the CBS All Access deal. I think it's great for, obviously, women's soccer. Besides that, I think it's great to see, soccer getting more notoriety in America and getting on CBS All Access. I think that's great. I'm curious to see how successful and that we'll be able to get more on these streaming services. So I think I'm happy about that. I am surprised about Twitch though, and just CBS All Access. Okay, that makes sense. We hear all these other players at the time, and then just Twitch comes in, and I forget that Twitch. What they do all day long is streaming. They stream video gamers, I guess, and then there are other people that live stream. But that's their business, and so it was just surprising to see them getting into the content streaming game. I don't know if you found that interesting, but it reminds me of like when Twitter was streaming, I think, Thursday Night Football games a while back, and it was just kind of like it's kind of weird that Twitter would do that, but they have a large reach and it makes sense. It's just kind of like, what? So, but it's cool that they're going to stream, Twitch is going to stream games free. So that's pretty awesome. It's just surprising. I was like, whoa, that just didn't fit in terms of like, you hear news all day long and like just one of those like, whoa moments of them getting into the film. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. All right. Apple TV Plus, there's a new drama series called Suspicion that's moving forward with Uma Thurman headlining. This is specifically a adaptation of an Israeli series called False Flag. Disney Plus has announced that there's a Beauty and the Beast prequel series that is in the works. So we'll focus on Gaston and LeFou, their relationship prior to the live action film. This would bring back Josh Gad and Luke Evans. Telefonica has entered a strategic alliance with Disney Plus. Again, we've talked about these before. This is just another company that potentially is going to help Disney get a further reach when it comes to getting to more potential subscribers, it is.
Disney's done just a bunch of deals in Europe in terms of getting, foot in the door at all these different, these different regions and countries in the European market, just how like diverse it is. I think that's kind of interesting to see that approach of, instead of kind of rolling their own service, and they are going to roll their own service out there too. You see a lot of these partnerships that they've been making with in the European sector. It's important to note.
And then finally with Disney Plus, there is the development of series for Disney Plus is going to be coming from the recently created larger Disney TV studios.
So I read the article, and can you help me and the listeners kind of help digest what this article is saying? Can you help describe of basically almost like a Schoolhouse Rock episode? How does a property, when it gets pitched, how does it become a show?
It actually deals a lot with what we were talking about last episode. Last episode, we were talking about how Hulu got a new president, and you were asking the question of, well, what do they do if they don't have the creative control over the content that's being created for Hulu? What is their job? And other than being an executive within a large company, what is it that they do? Because you had mentioned in the last episode that your understanding was that all of the content creation was coming from higher up. That's exactly what this article is confirming. It's basically confirming that the wide variety of production companies that are within the Walt Disney Company as a whole, they are all directly reporting to a larger studio called Disney TV Studios, where all of the smaller companies that are creating the content are actually reporting to. So it streamlines the process of getting content created and having a specific purpose to have that content or a specific place of delivery for that content. So if ABC Studios, which typically creates a lot of content for ABC, but also creates other content such as, for other networks like Freeform, and there's some other content that's available on other broadcast networks as well, they are going to be reporting to Disney TV Studios, just like 20th Century Fox, which is, I believe, now called 20th Century TV, no longer 20th Century Fox TV. They've been, tasked with a lot of content that's specifically being created for a variety of different channels as well, whether it be Fox or other broadcast channels or cable channels. But then more specifically, there's the Disney Television Studios, which is the idea is a mega studio. The idea is that it's overseen by Dana Walden and run by Craig Hungans. And basically the idea is that Fox 21, which is another one, ABC Studios, 20th TV, all of these different labels that Disney has, basically there's somebody in charge that says, okay, let's produce different content. You specialize in this. Let's get content made. But also the idea is that it'll streamline the type of content that's coming to specific services like Hulu or Disney Plus, so they can sit there and say, okay, we've got ABC Studios. They're currently got 10 series in production. That's kind of where we want them to be at. So instead of having them focus on a new project for Disney Plus, we're going to shift our focus and see what content we can create within the 20th TV brand or Fox 21 or something like that. And it does sound like it is more complicated than it should be, because eventually you could probably see some of these smaller studios just being absorbed. But for the time being, it seems like because there are so many different television studios within the Walt Disney Company that are currently producing series, the idea is to have one large company over all of them to say, okay, this is what we need to be focusing on, and your production company needs to specifically, focus on this type of content because we're looking for this type of content currently for Disney Plus or Hulu or ABC or some of their other networks that they have, like the Disney Channel or something like that. So it's basically exactly what you were saying last week that you thought was happening. This is just reinforcing that it is actually happening. There is one studio that's making a lot of the creative decisions that just trickles down to the smaller studios within the company.
Because I was reading it and I was like, well, unnecessarily complicated and convoluted, and just I had to read it a few times and it finally hit me, and I just figured that it would probably be helped if it was elaborated on a little bit more. Now, my last question is pretty simple, right? So the governing body now is this Disney TV Studios, but Disney Plus, Hulu, etc., they could create movies. So the movies that these streaming services make, would those be overseen by the Disney TV Studios?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think
it is still on the streaming.
Yeah.
Not a TV show.
Yeah,
so.
It's not. So specifically going off of other films that were created, I'm going to specifically talk about Disney Plus because I'm not super familiar with the production companies behind the stuff on Hulu, but I know that Hulu also, they buy projects. It's not just them creating projects. So, but for Disney Plus, specifically the projects that they released since the service launched, they launched the movie Lady and the Tramp, which was actually done by Walt Disney Pictures. They had Noelle, which was also done by Walt Disney Pictures. They had, I don't remember the name, but they had the film that had William Dafoe about the sled dogs. That one was the latest one in January, and then they had Timmy something Failure. I don't remember what it's called, but that was the one that came out in February. This month they have Stargirl. every single one of those movies, as far as I know, have all been done by the Walt Disney Company, just obviously on a much smaller scale than the stuff they're typically making based off of, the other animation projects they have or the live action stuff. It's a lot of the stuff that they're creating is stuff that they used to create in abundance, but now they have a place for it to specifically go, and that is Disney Plus. So I don't think necessarily that any of the film projects that we see on Hulu or Disney Plus are going to be in any way, shape, or form overseen by the Disney Television Studios. I think that's specifically just television series.
Gotcha.
All right, so then jumping over to Quibi, there's a couple of different things. I want to start off with just the stuff that they've announced, just more new content that they've announced. They've announced a cleaning competition series, and they've also ordered a Fire Island comedy called Trip. Those are two new projects they've announced. There's a couple of things related to the launch, because now we're less than a month away. Quibi has announced the entire lineup of shows that will be available on the launch date. And there's a lot. There's a lot of content that's coming that will be available in the first day it launches. There's over a slate of 51 different shows, and it includes 4 movies as well that will be available. But there's a lot of content. Now, obviously, they need a lot of content to, at the beginning of launch, because not only will they be shorter episodes, but they need a lot of content because they're going to be releasing this content in waves. It's not going to be released every single Friday or something like that, where, you look at Disney Plus, all of their new content typically releases on Fridays. Quibi's not doing that. They're going to be rolling stuff out. A lot of their daily essentials will be coming out every single day. So they have a wide variety. We have a link in the show notes for you to check out the entire list. Honestly, you're not going to find a whole lot of surprises here, because a lot of the stuff that is actually here is stuff that we've already talked about or mentioned. The daily essentials make up the bulk of what they're actually producing. There's a couple of things that stand out specifically. There's a Fandango show that's called Trailers by Fandango, which will just show you all of the latest TV, streaming, and movie trailers that have released that specific day. There's a couple of TMZ shows. There's a show that's going to be headed up by Rotten Tomatoes. There's also a Polygon show. So there's a lot of different content. There's sports, news, obviously, but the daily essentials are going to make a bulk of what they're offering on a normal daily basis, while there's a lot of other original shows that are either scripted or they are documentary series. So that is definitely check it out if you are planning on signing up for Quibi. The one huge plus that they have just announced is that if you sign up for Quibi, either pre-order it or you pre-sign up for it before it actually launches, or if you sign up when it does launch, you will actually get a 90-day trial of the service for free. So that expands past pretty much every other service out there that we talk about. As far as when they launched, Disney Plus had a 7-day, Apple TV, I believe, had a 7-day. We haven't heard anything about HBO Max, but Netflix, I think, has a 7-day trial when you sign up initially. So it's blowing, obviously, all of those other trials out of the water. It's a huge, huge opportunity for them to get people in, but also if they're not charging people for the first 3 months and they're releasing an insane amount of content, you have to imagine that, of course, that's obviously going to cost money too. This is just part of their marketing pushes to get people to sign up for it with the intent of checking it out over the course of 3 months and then sticking with it. So they understand that people are going to have to get used to the service, and that's why they're offering, 90 days. So definitely something to check out. At this point, there's enough stuff, and with that free trial, I'm definitely going to check out Quibi when it launches, and we'll talk more about it when it does launch, because I want to see if the hype is real. And that goes back to something else, another article that we have, which is there was an article that posted up on the finance side of Yahoo about how Quibi is facing a ton of scrutiny. And basically, there's a lot of analysts who are very skeptical about the success of Quibi because of a variety of different things. But amongst the reasons, one of them is that we just talked about last episode about how, Quibi initially raised $1 billion. They just raised another $750 million. People are concerned about how much money they're actually raising, but then also how, even with all the money that they're raising, that compares to the other streaming services. And when you look at services like Disney Plus, which talk about how they're going to be spending a couple $1 billion initially the first couple of years before they can even break even. You talk about HBO Max, which talked about how they're going to be spending $2 billion. Netflix is spending $17 billion in 2020 on content. And they understand that they're having to do this because they need to be able to create content, draw people in. Quibi, on the other hand, is creating a lot more content because they're having to fill up a lot more blocks of programming. And in turn, you're looking at a situation where could they be blowing through all that money? And we talked about that last week about how is it possible that they're going to blow through all this money extremely quickly? Is the reason they had a second, a B round funding is because they already blew through the $1 billion that they already had with infrastructure costs and production costs for all the content that they have out the gate. We know that there's lots of other content coming. I guess the question is it going to be, is it going to be enough? They don't have a lot of other avenues of raising more money at this point. Obviously, if it's successful, they could bring in more investors, but there's, that brings its own issues along with it. Is like the more investors you bring in and the more money you raise, the more people you have to basically report back to because they're investing in the company. So, I'm skeptical myself. I've said this from day one with the idea of what Quibi is. I think the problem is there's already a Quibi out there. It's called YouTube. There's lots of these, daily essentials type of content that exist over on YouTube. I mean, there's news channels that are, putting up segments for free on YouTube that you watch with ads, and Quibi is just expecting
you got Flip TV, you got Flipboard TV as well.
Yeah.
As and it's going to be another thing we're talking about. But Flipboard TV has announced that they're going to launch their own little thing. So that's another, a big player into this whole micro show movement. And I didn't know that you're going to bring up YouTube right then, so I chuckled really hard. But yes, that's how most people use YouTube, is to watch the blurbs. I mean, I know people who love Jimmy Fallon, but they won't watch the Tonight Show. They'll go up the next day and watch just the 5-minute, 7-minute segments of each of those moments. So I think the article brings me a good point of the selling point of Quibi is its style, but its style. I want to talk about style in terms of like its format and the show and the 10-minute segments essentially. But that may or may not kill the show. I mean, that might not kill the whole entire project. And so it is concerning. I think it is good that analysts have seen that, yes, although it's a new streaming service, you get all these people, see the funding, look at from, in terms of paper, the hype from like the industry seems a little bit real. You get these creators, you get the studios investing, stuff like that. So it's great that they believe in it, but I'm still curious of what the consumer is going to think. And I think that the article has on point. Yes, it's not necessarily new, but it did point out the fact of what makes it special may or may not kill the whole entire thing. It is concerning because I'm definitely not sure if it's going to succeed, because if YouTube is as a subdivision of Google, well, technically Alphabet, it barely breaks even some quarters or just loses money in general. It's like, I'm curious how Quibi, who doesn't have the financial backing of Google, can succeed, can thrive. And it's a little bit worrisome, because if they fail, then obviously people are going to stop pushing forward in the streaming space in terms of invention and doing something new and pushing the boundaries. They're going to keep with like the 45-minute TV content or the movies or stuff like that. You're not going to see this kind of new idea of short form content. I think short form content is going to have its place, but I'm concerned for Quibi, and I hope it all the best and hope it works well. So, and I
hope it's successful, because I mean, there's promise there. I like the idea of innovation when it comes within something new. It's it's not just another service. There has to be something else outside of just having different types of content. HBO Max is all about, when they were doing their presentation, they presented about how instead of having the algorithms that were going to suggest things, it was going to be human curation or suggestions based off of celebrities that you might like or something like that. Everybody's trying to find their own thing to make their service different than somebody else. Disney is specifically, they've got more concurrent streams than any other service. You can have more accounts on the service than anybody else. There's different pluses and minuses. Netflix, there's nobody who can compare the amount of content that Netflix currently has at this point. There's a lot of different reasons for each service to like stand out. But the thing is, Quibi's big thing is their small runtime and their, these segments, or as they're obviously calling them, the quick bites. So the the thing is, I hope it's successful because it does show that there is room for growth when it comes to different types of content that could potentially work. I just, at the same time, the skeptic inside of me just has to look and say, like, okay, yes, what you're creating is something different, but it also is very much in line with some stuff that you'd find over on YouTube. But maybe also, I just have to point out, I follow a lot of the happenings within YouTube as a company and like the changes that they make and things like that. And one of the things that YouTube pushed a while back with some of their algorithms was the amount of engagement of how long people would watch their videos. So they went from having a lot of really short videos that were very successful to changing the way things were promoted. And one of the things they changed was the longer the amount of time that people watched the videos, the more it would get pushed or promoted. So you'd see things in trending that were over 10 minutes because that was what they were aiming for. They want people to be more engaged for a longer period of time on the site. Conveniently, Quibi is going, under 10 minutes, because everything that they're creating is 10 minutes or less. So it's one of those things where they're doing something that is not necessarily super pushed over at YouTube, so it is different, but there was a reason why YouTube wanted people to be more engaged, and there's a reason why they wanted them to be watching for more than 10 minutes, and honestly, I believe it's the amount of ads that they can roll if there's a longer period of time that you're actually watching a video. So Quibi's got they've got their hurdles that they're going to have to jump over to really stand out. I think the 90-day trial is a huge thing for them because it will give a lot of people the ability to try it out and decide whether or not it actually makes sense and it works for them. And if it does, then, they'll be paying slightly more money than some of the other major streaming services that we talk about every single week. So, all right, so moving over to HBO Max, there was a couple of new series. First up, there was a Mark Wahlberg docuseries called Wall Street Ordered, which will follow his hectic life as an actor. There's a dramedy called Good Vibes Only, which is being developed, and that is going to be with the Beach Boys and John Stamos. Nothing for Peacock. The niche streaming services, Flipboard TV, as Tony mentioned earlier, is launching a direct competitor to Apple News, where they're going to be doing short-form news videos specifically available through their app. And then starting in 2022, the PGA Tour's streaming service will be a part of ESPN+. So this will be very much in line with what the UFC partnership has been with ESPN, where if you want to watch certain UFC pay-per-views, you have to actually order them through ESPN Plus to be able to watch it. The prior to the main events, some of that stuff would be available through ESPN Plus just as part of your membership. But the PGA Tour has their own standalone streaming service, but it's going to be underneath ESPN Plus. So you'll essentially need to have an ESPN Plus subscription in order to watch the PGA Tour after 2022.
So how does that affect their partnership with CBS and I guess NBC? Because they routinely show, PGA Tour events on CBS and NBC all the time.
So I'm guessing what's most likely the case is if there is streaming rights locked into those companies, they are expiring in 2022, and that's why it's a little further out. There's probably something built into their current contracts where as far as live television, they'll still be able to do that because as we've seen with a lot of the different sports leagues and things like that, they're splitting up the broadcast rights and the streaming rights. We've talked about NFL. We're actually going to talk about that as one of our smaller discussions in a little bit. But the idea is that because they're splitting it, I don't foresee Peacock or CBS All Access having any PGA Tour stuff come 2022. It's all going to be on ESPN Plus. So
gotcha.
That's where I'm at. So
Gotcha. Makes sense.
all right. So then other streaming providers, Comcast has added Hulu, CBS All Access, and Stars to their Flex device. If you're unfamiliar with the Flex device, we haven't really talked about it here, but it's a newer device. It specifically is available to Comcast customers. If you're actually a Comcast Internet customer, you can actually get the device for free. And what it is a 4K streaming device similar to an Amazon Fire TV or the Apple TV or a Roku, wherein it has apps preloaded, but not as many. So the idea is that it's not running Android TV, which allows you to have basically a wide range of apps. It has select apps, but the idea is it's to give customers who don't want to pay for cable an option of watching the on-demand stuff that Comcast offers for free, and then a lot of it's ad-supported, so they can still grab some revenue from the ad-supported stuff by offering it free to customers. It's essentially like handing, it would be like if CBS All Access handed customers a device that just featured Pluto TV. That is obviously a free service, but it allows them to watch things ad-supported. But it does also have the ability to have other apps preloaded onto it. There are certain ones, Netflix was one of them, Prime Video, this was at launch, but now they've added Hulu, CBS All Access, and Stars, and they're promising more. But if you have a Flex device, that is something that is available. Recently, AT&T, I don't really want to get into the details because this is going more towards cable. AT&T released a new device called AT&T, or I shouldn't say a device, a service called AT&T TV Now. And it's kind of, the idea is that they're trying to replace a lot of their other TV offerings. It's a very expensive option. It's just as expensive as cable in a lot of regard, but they also have a device that has apps preloaded on it. It allows you to watch TV, and that Flex device also allows you, if you decide down the line that you'd like to add the cable package to your Xfinity plan, you can actually add a cable package, and then you don't even have to do any setup. It just automatically works through the Flex device. So the idea of all of these devices is like to get people who are thinking about cord cutting, get them a device, but still from the cable company. Cable company will need to try to figure out ways of monetizing those devices that they're giving away for free, and that's where we're at. So moving into our discussion points, we've got a couple of different discussion points. Depending on time, we'll nail them all, and we'll see what happens. So the first one is, this article actually came at the end of February. It was over on CNBC. But it basically talks about how NFL TV rights are looking to be figured out for the rest of the decade, and part of that is that the streaming rights are the other part, because as I mentioned before, broadcast rights and streaming rights are being split with a lot of the leagues, and the NFL is one of them that's looking at potentially splitting them and doing broadcast rights potentially amongst the same type of companies they have now with, NBC, CBS, Fox, but it also states that Disney is potentially interested in some of the broadcast rights, either for ESPN or ABC. Streaming service-wise, Amazon, ESPN Plus, YouTube TV could be interested in the rights to Sunday Ticket, which would take it away from AT&T's DirecTV, which, in my opinion, would immediately kill DirecTV. But I don't know that AT&T is that concerned about it, because they've been losing customers from DirecTV regardless of whether they still have the Sunday Ticket. And I'm sure they're paying an insane amount of money to have the rights to Sunday Ticket. Those rights aren't up for, I believe, another 2 seasons, but the talks start way ahead of time so that everything can be worked on in advance. But there's a lot of different companies that are interested in the streaming side of it, and that's what we're going to focus on real quick. And the question is, out of the companies that they specifically mentioned in the article, Amazon, ESPN Plus, YouTube TV, those are the 3 they specifically mentioned. We've heard other companies mentioned. CBS All Access, I'm sure, would be interested in at least getting the rights to the games that are on, that are broadcasted on CBS. I'm sure Peacock could be interested in getting rights to the games that are aired on NBC. Fox has talked about how they're going to be creating their own streaming service, so I'm sure they would want those. But I think that all the streaming rights are going to be grouped into one or split, with certain games between a couple different services. Currently, Amazon was airing this past season. They were airing the Thursday night football games, and in the past they've experimented a couple different things, but Amazon seemed to be the front runner for the longest time. But you look at some of these other companies, ESPN Plus, it would be a huge get for them to get some rights to some of these games, because you could actually try to pick and choose depending on if they have exclusive rights. You could actually pick the different games you could watch using the streaming service, which would be a huge advantage. Then you've got YouTube TV, which has the pocketbook to basically compete with anybody out there because they just have the money. So out of these 3 companies, what are your feelings about who could potentially land with it? Not, even if it's just a guess, not necessarily an educated guess, but who do you expect to like really be the front runner?
I think Amazon by far. I think they have one of the biggest cash. I think they have some of the most the biggest pile of cash to spend, and I think that they're going to spend it on sports. I think they've been streaming foreign soccer, and I'm curious on the stats from that. Obviously, we probably won't see them ever because those are going to be internal to Amazon. But $10 is they're streaming pretty well, and given that confidence in seeing their current numbers of their NFL offering, I think they're going to re-up and potentially push for even more rights to more games or more than just Thursdays. I can see them really making a push in the streaming space for NFL sports. And I think that they're the biggest contender. Disney, I was reading in here talking about simulcasting on ESPN Plus and on ESPN or ABC. I think that's interesting. It would really give some legitimacy to the ESPN Plus package, because right now I find their ESPN Plus package just a joke. I can't really watch anything good because I might get like extra bonus coverage of something, but it's like, well, I just want to watch the main feed. I don't want to watch some weird camera feed that makes like one type of shot look cool, but it makes the rest of the game not interesting. So they're in rotation, although that they have a lot on their plate already, dealing and juggling with a bunch of different things. And I don't know how much they want to be tied to sports. I know sports are important, but when you got a business as ESPN who's so heavily invested into sports, in that ESPN has been losing money over the past few years, you got to take that account a little bit. So I'm curious about them. Honestly, I can see Apple making a really big push. I think they have one of the largest cash piles out of any company in the world, and I can see them really pushing for different and interesting types of content. I think that getting an NFL sports streaming package of some note would really help them out and bring some legitimacy to them, and they can definitely outspend anyone in this list. So I think that's important. Fox is still in the game for streaming, is a little bit interesting. Viacom, CBS. I'd love to see Viacom, CBS's deal not just be for their cable, but also for if they can also get the streaming rights for the games that they do air, to also stream on CBS All Access or their other new streaming service in the future. I would personally like that a lot because, I like my TV, but sometimes I won't be at the TV. And so YouTube TV, I think that they're just hanging on by a thread, and I think that they might get something, but I don't think that they're going to be a serious competitor in terms of like Amazon, Apple, or Disney. And so this article doesn't bring up Apple that much, but I really do see Apple making a big play into sports streaming. So that's kind of my analysis. I don't really see Comcast doing anything more with what they're doing right now with their Sunday afternoon package. I mean, they might go after a Sunday night package. They might go after maybe a Sunday afternoon game, but I don't see them becoming that really big in terms of streaming. I think that they're going to be fine with just streaming their one or two NFL primetime games a week and just call that a day. I really see that they're just going to keep the status quo. So I think that Amazon and Apple are going to make the two biggest pushes. Disney's going to make a decently big push, but I don't think they're going to go as far as an Amazon or a Apple in terms of like online streaming rights.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Apple could be the company that comes out from nowhere that nobody's even expecting, because I don't think that anybody's even remotely considering Apple. Like we've seen articles that have popped up saying that Apple could have interest, but I think a lot of those articles stem from the idea that Apple has an insane amount of money that they can throw at it just to get it. At this point in time, I don't know that Apple would, that would be a very different thing to get into. Not to say that they couldn't. Amazon doesn't have a lot of live TV options, but this would, they've obviously showed that it could work. So Apple could be watching what Amazon's doing and saying, hey, actually we could do this, and it would be a huge get for us. And honestly, at their price point, there's a potential that they could charge, a little bit more as just an add-on to what they are offering with Apple TV Plus, and it would be a good deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, and especially given that, so many Apple TV subscriptions come on, iPhones or iPads or a new Mac. The point being is that it's already pretty much pre-set up on your device, and many people aren't home on Sunday afternoons or Sunday nights to watch these games, or Monday nights or Thursday nights to watch these games. So yes, all these companies have their mobile app, but I think for Apple TV, their app is like the most important thing. And I don't have like the Apple TV app set up on the Roku or whatever. I watch it on my phone or my computer. And I think that if you do a survey, I think that's how a good portion of people watch the Apple TV Plus subscriptions. So especially watching sports on mobile, but not in front of a TV. I think that is a big draw for one of these players. And so I think that that's going to be the reason. And knowing the NFL and their serious love of money, I can see them making a deal with Apple just because they're going to outbid everyone. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the best in terms for them to grow the brand. But from a streaming service point of view, I think Apple has the most to gain and nothing really to lose, second with Amazon. I don't think it's necessarily best for the NFL to go with Apple, but I think Apple needs to make a big play. And I think that's why they're going to go after an NFL or something just huge to draw that in. So that's kind of why that prediction is going to be a little bit bold, a little bit different from what a lot of people are thinking. But I think Apple really needs something huge, and I think that they have the most money and they can just outspend. Hopefully it works for Apple, but we'll see. That's why I'm choosing Apple is just more outside information than just streaming numbers and users and subscribers. It's knowing how much money they have and how much the NFL owners really like their money.
All right, so we're gonna jump into our next discussion point, which is a real quick one. But there was an article that popped up at Core Cutters News, and it was talking about how Walmart is potentially working on their own version of Amazon Prime. Now, specifically in the article, it does not talk about anything related to streaming, but I wanted to just bring this up for a different reason. So many people know Amazon Prime. Typically, you pay about $10 a month, but you pay yearly for an Amazon Prime membership, which for most larger areas of the country, you can get 1-day delivery. Most everywhere else, you can get 2-day delivery for almost everything that is Amazon fulfilled. Okay. On top of that, they've recently launched Fresh Delivery, which is grocery delivery within certain areas of the country. On top of just the delivery options, you also get the ability to have access to Amazon Prime Video. You also there's Prime Music. There's a bunch of other things that go along with the Prime membership. But Prime Video is a perk within the Prime membership. Now, Walmart is looking at it. They're currently working on testing a service that's called Walmart Plus, and the test is that they're charging $98 a year for an unlimited same-day delivery of groceries from more than 1,600 Walmarts. Now, that is one way that Walmart could compete with Amazon, because Amazon, while they do have the fresh delivery, which is the grocery delivery, they're limited on what they can actually fulfill based off of what they have. Walmart, on the other hand, has huge stores that they can use as mini fulfillment centers for all grocery delivery. Now, how this relates back to streaming this is interesting, because if they were actually trying to work on something like this, you would think that they would try to utilize some of the other aspects that Amazon also has as perks as well. For example, Amazon has Prime Video, and Walmart currently, at least for the time being, owns Vudu, but they haven't really done anything with Vudu to make it more of a streaming service. They do have some exclusive streaming series on the service, but for the most part, it's just it's a digital marketplace for you to buy and view movies. But they've been talking about, and we've talked about it within the last month and a half, we've talked about how they're looking at selling off Vudu, and I'm wondering if the reason why they're selling off Vudu is because they're looking at expanding their delivery service. That could be potentially why. But the other thing is, it's just odd timing for them to get rid of Vudu when they could utilize Vudu as a service like Amazon does with Prime Video and kind of go into it. But it does go back to something that you've brought up in the past, which is maybe Walmart just doesn't want to be in the business of production, and they want to focus on the core business, which is the retail side of things, which Amazon, they continue to expand. And while they make a bunch of money off Prime memberships and they make a lot of content for Prime Video, the bulk of where all of their profits actually coming from is obviously Amazon Web Services. I don't think they actually make anything on, the shipping, because they lose so much money every year on shipping.
Yeah, Amazon is one of the few companies to really be very good at doing multiple things at the same time. I mean, they essentially, it's a retail business. That's what we kind of know them as. But you got AWS, you have, basically Amazon Prime Video, which is kind of doing its own little thing within Amazon Prime General. AWS, Amazon is the retailer. They're making, IoT devices at home, Audible. Like they do so many different things, and they do them pretty successfully. I mean, you could look at the numbers and kind of debate it later, but most of those, what I just said, are like big name brands and just ideas and concepts that they've been really good at. But a lot of companies are not really good at doing multiple things at the same time. I mean, Google, which is just another huge player, cannot, really separate itself from being an ads business. They spend all this money doing a bunch of other different things, but really it all comes down to funneling people back into ads. And for Walmart, I think that they have in the past tried to explore into kind of branching out and diversifying their business a little bit, but sometimes that's just not the case. And that I think kind of they've got a new CTO, I think. He was in charge of the technology. Might not be the CTO role, and he really helped focus the online presence and really helping add a lot of new features in the online space for Walmart to compete even better at the retail side. And it's why I've really enjoyed really the Walmart redesign and their app and just the new integrations that they have, because they're really pushed forward on the online retail. And they bought jet.com as not a competitor to Amazon, but it helps with their online presence a little bit in the technology that Jet does and leverages and stuff like that. But the point I'm saying is that I just think that Walmart at this time has just come to the conclusion that, okay, it is better for us to just focus on what we do best, and that is retail. It is to sell stuff and is to get stuff to consumers' hands. And being in the content creation space and the digital media space, I think it might help the profits a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a super game changer if they went into it. And so in their minds, it's like, why would we waste the manpower to run a unit, the Voodoo unit, when we could just sell that off? And yes, we might lose a little bit of profit, but we could take that energy into something else and to focus the business fully on one thing instead of diversifying into these different things. I think that's kind of what Walmart's done. And you could definitely see in terms of their numbers and reputation, especially, they've done a lot better and they've gotten a lot more positive press. And I think that I wouldn't say they're scaring Amazon per se, but they're making Amazon go even above and beyond. And so that's where Walmart is as a business. And I think at this time, they're just not in video creation, video streaming, video delivery business anymore, besides of like, can you go buy a DVD somewhere? I can see them maybe like buying Redbox or something, just because there's so many Redboxes at Walmart's, but I don't see them really making a true Amazon Prime Video contender or a Netflix contender. I think that they're just fine just being the distributor and selling stuff. So that's kind of what Walmart is as a business, and it makes sense. I think it's best that they do sell Voodoo. I think Voodoo's got great customers. They have a good product, but I think it's best for Walmart if they part ways. I think it's best for the Voodoo team that they went to somewhere that truly kind of valued what they do. And I think that's going to also help the consumers as well of the Voodoo product to be with a parent company that actually believes in Voodoo. I think because like right now Voodoo just is, and it's a collection for my video collection before I had Netflix. And so I think that they have something special there. And I think that, for the Voodoo team, they need to go to somewhere where they feel valued. So that's why they have to split. It's why I'm okay with Walmart in trying to deliver this competitor to Prime as an overall service, to not include Prime Video, or at least in the way that Prime Video is now. I don't see them dealing anything with like video or streaming or content creation or even content delivery anymore. I think that they want to get out of that business because it's distracting them from their core business.
Yeah. So that's where Walmart's at this point in time. We'll have to see. I mean, obviously, this is a thing that Vox has said that they're working on. But if they were planning on doing something official, we'll hear about it more openly in the near future. So we'll see what happens with that. That we did have one other conversation to have. We're going to actually hold that one for next week. But I will give a brief hint at what it is about. It's specifically talking about how some of the larger parent companies of some of the streaming services that we talk about here are actually divesting in smaller stakes in other companies that they own in order to potentially use the funds to do their streaming services. So we'll be talking about that next week on the show. As far as trailers goes, there's a number of different trailers. You can check out all the trailers on the website. The one that specifically stuck out to me, as I was watching through a lot of these, was there was a show called Home Before Dark on Apple TV Plus, which is coming the beginning of April. That looked really interesting. It's basically the idea of when a man, when he was a teenager, his best friend disappeared. There was a huge controversy about whether or not he was involved. He left town, grew up, had a child, was married. He ends up moving back to the town, and the daughter is convinced that she's going to be able to solve the crime, and the daughter is like 9 years old. So the idea is that it kind of goes in line with the title, where she's kind of like a detective, but it does feel like, you know, a unique point of view, despite the fact that it's clearly a drama meant for adults, not necessarily for kids, but it is focusing on an 8-year-old girl. So it has slight Stranger Things vibes, but also a lot of, you know, typical drama vibes, mystery and things like that. So that's the one that stood out to me.
Yeah, none of these trailers seem interesting to me. So, and I also haven't really had much time to check out trailers or streaming just due to how busy work is and how life has been turned upside down because of the disease that's running rampant across the world. So I will get to streaming all my stuff this weekend. So
yeah, and I'm actually hoping on getting some new shows in too, because it's been some time since I've watched some new shows, and there's a lot of new things that have come out recently, and I really wanted to re-binge all of Ozark before season 3, but I'm not sure that's going to be happening either. So for all of that, there is a lot of content that's constantly releasing. With all of that being said, be sure to check out the show notes to links to all the articles we talked about here, as well as links to all the trailers that have released in the past week. And you can follow us on Twitter and Discord, where we post all of those trailer links and the links to the articles that we talk about here on the podcast, as well as some articles that we might not talk about on the podcast. Twitter and Discord, you can find the links to those, as well as our Instagram page directly over on our website, thestreamwars.io. You can send us an email at thestreamwars@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for topics you'd like us to discuss on future episodes. We'd always appreciate feedback, so if you could leave us reviews wherever you're listening to the podcast, that is always greatly appreciated as well. Next week, we should be back on schedule with our normal release of Wednesday or Thursday. So with all of that being said, for Tony and myself, this has been The Streaming Wars. We will see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to The Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.